Well, good morning. Welcome to the third and final day of the 2020 Shift Summit. So as always, come on in, introduce yourselves, and let us know your name, the organization that you're with, where you're watching from here today. I'd really like to know the outdoor destination that you dream about when the pressures of our modern day lives become too much. Also, I'd ask that you reflect this morning on what you've learned and heard over the past 3 days and consider where the space canon should go from here and what you think we should focus on with next year's shift. We'd welcome your thoughts and insights. Feel free to drop those in the chat as well and discuss them with other participants, and then be prepared to offer up some formal suggestions when we reconvene later today for the closing keynotes. My name's Christian Beckwith. I'm the Executive Director of Shift. We're very excited to have you back for this third day of this year's program, which is focused on policy, and that is about the ways that we can move all the exceptional work we've been learning about over the past 2 days from the exception to the norm. So if you've not yet done so, please join our Slack channel at Shift Nature Health. Slack is where we are gathering in between the sessions for this year's shift, and we have channels for every unique event. There's also a channel for general discussions. We are monitoring Slack, and we'll be able to answer any questions that you might have on Slack. We'll also be posting the recordings of the various workshops and keynotes on Slack once the summit is finished, so that you can go back and have a look and see some of the ones that you might not have been able to catch. Keep the conversation going with the folks that you've met over the past few days. So I would like to thank our sponsors who have made this year's program possible, in particular our presenting sponsor, All Trails. They've been a terrific support for us this year and last year. With the National Park Service, they are also the key sponsor of our Health and Nature webinar series, which brought a lot of folks into our fold. So if that's how you came to find out about us, welcome. Also like to thank Christy Walton, the S. Renato Seligman Foundation, the VF Foundation, Patagonia, the Cliff Bar Family Foundation, Wellbeing Trust, 1908 Brands and Boulder Clean, Ravana Designs, the Laura L. and Martin N. Kelly Family Foundation Trust, Marcia Kunstel, and Kirtan Management Solutions. So, on day one, on Wednesday, we focused on the evidence for the mental health benefits of nature contact. Yesterday, we learned about the work of organizations and initiatives from around the country that are putting that evidence into practice. And today we're diving into the ways that we can integrate what we know and the various ways we know of implementing it into the very fabric of our society. So we've got 3 great workshops lined up for you today. Next Gen, which is exploring ways to effectively and equitably engage kids in parks, green space, and nature in the current and post-COVID world, and how we can make sure nature becomes and remains a daily part of every kid's life. Psychological resiliency, which is looking at ways we can center nature's healing effects, particularly among vulnerable communities, amid the convergence of multiple crises. And resource management, which will explore the mental health benefits of nature contact, barriers to those benefits, and the ways resource managers can make users feel safe and welcome. The workshops will run until 12 o'clock, that is Mountain Time. After a half-hour break, we will return for our closing keynotes with Alyssa Delgado, Carolyn Lindquist, and Tyler Norris. So all 3 of these folks are relatively new to the Shift community. Alyssa and Caroline are both fellows of the 2020 Emerging Leaders Program, and Tyler has become part of an ongoing dialogue about not only the health benefits of time outside, but also the spiritual dimensions of those benefits and the need to bring reciprocity more deeply into our work, our lives, and our society. The interactions that we've had with these 3 brilliant folks have enriched our thinking and our conversations over the past few months as we pulled the program together for this year. In stepping into the conversations, Alyssa, Caroline, and Tyler have become part of our extended family. One of the great joys of Shift is meeting people like them who we otherwise never would have met. If Shift has a secret sauce, it's just that. It's the cross-pollination that occurs when people whose lives might not have otherwise intersected connect for the first time, and the collaborations, relationships, and friendships that result when we discover passions and a hope for a healthy citizenry in a healthy world as a shared common ground. Our keynote speaker this morning is one of those people too. Atiya Wells is a pediatric nurse and a nature educator in Baltimore City who dedicates her free time to fostering nature connections in urban environments. She's the founder of Backyard Basecamp, an organization geared toward connecting Baltimore's residents to wildlife in the city, and also serves as the executive director of Bliss Meadows, an innovative social justice project that creates equitable access to green space in her community and preserves 10 acres of land in order to connect Black, Indigenous, and people of color to African-American agricultural history and culture. Tia came to Shift last year, actually in Jackson, which was pretty terrific. We hope we're having that opportunity again next year. She came on behalf of another Shift Award-winning initiative called 8 Shields. And not only did she represent 8 Shields with aplomb, but she also graced us with a bird language workshop, which we've come to find out is just another of her many skill sets that she keeps hidden in her back pocket. In the months following last year's Shift, we continued to stay in touch. And a few months ago, she joined us on the Health and Nature webinar series for a discussion with Dr. Robert Czar and Dr. Kathy Wolf about park prescription programs. And Atiya spoke to the ways that we can make a citizen-led initiative like hers that creates green space in an under-resourced community the norm. You basically can't. To do that, you'd need to clone Atiya, and that's a tall order. A mom, a nurse, an innovator, a disruptor, a person who sees a problem, looks around for a solution, and if one is not readily apparent, makes it up on her own. The more we learned about her work, the more we were moved by her capacity to multitask on a level that would have resulted in a truce between Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. For her work on Backyard Basecamp, her innovations as a nature nurse, her ongoing efforts to enrich her community, and the inspiration she brings us all with her work, we're honored this year to present her with not one, but 2 Shift Awards. The first in the Land Management Innovation category for her work on Bliss Meadows, and the second is this year's Health and Nature Champion for her overall efforts to promote stronger connections to the natural world in her community. These are the sorts of people who are making the world better, one nature connection and one smile at a time. It's an honor to recognize Atiya's work with this year's awards. She's the first person to receive 2 in a single year. So we're going to show a presentation by Atiya next. She is with us here this morning, so if you have any interest in chatting with her, she'll be responding to that. And then we ask that you bear in mind any questions that you would like to ask her, and when her presentation is finished, she will come back on to field them with you. Atiya Wells.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Atiya Wells. I'm a pediatric nurse and outdoor educator here in Baltimore City. I hope you're all enjoying the Shift conference thus far. I'm going to be discussing a project that we are working on in Baltimore City to reconnect inner city residents to land and nature. We had the distinct honor of winning a Shift Award this year in the land management category. But before I get into it, I want to provide a bit of background for those of you who have never been to Baltimore City. So Baltimore is a very segregated city. We have what we call the white L and the black butterfly. As you can see from the images above and from their names, the white L is the more affluent, mostly white residents live. And the black butterfly is where the low to moderate income Black and brown residents live. Our project is right in the northeast corner up near this wing, where there's an intersection of African American low income and unemployment. So Baltimore is often called the city of neighborhoods. So welcome to my neighborhood. This is Frankfurt. I've lived in Baltimore for about 15 years and have lived in this neighborhood for about 6 years. And here are some facts about Frankfurt. It is the largest neighborhood in Baltimore at 2.5 square miles wide. It houses over 25,000 residents. More than 50% of the residents live below the federal poverty level. Black residents were not allowed in this neighborhood until around the 1950s, and the effects of white flight led to decreased property values and disinvestment in the area. Resident deaths are primarily related to diabetes and heart disease, and we are classified as a USDA food desert, or we're under food apartheid, as we like to call it. And here's another chart comparing the 2 areas of the city. There's the white L and the black butterfly, where you can see the white L has the free bus, the black butterfly has the buses that you need to pay for. Moving down, the highways are built for downtown access, where the highways are built either over or through Black neighborhoods. And then if you move down to food access, we have the white L has better access to quality grocery stores, and the black butterfly, we're more prone to feature food deserts with fewer quality grocery stores. What's missing from this comparison chart is parks and green space. And so the majority of the larger parks are located in the white L, while we have mostly ball fields and pocket parks from what were once vacant lots. And so I started Backyard Basecamp in 2018, which was a really hard year for me mentally. I had left bedside nursing to work an office job, and I hated every minute of it. And my disdain for my job led over into my disdain for life in general. And the further I cycled down into depression, the stronger I felt the pull to be outdoors. So eventually I began heeding that urge, and through clocking dirt time, I found healing. And I launched Backyard Basecamp to provide an avenue to foster healing and create an appreciation of our urban nature. The Bliss Meadows project came about as I was enrolled in a self-paced naturalist training course, and we had to find a convenient place to observe the patterns of nature every day. I thought to myself, I live on the busiest street in Baltimore. There will be no nature here. And so I pulled up my house on Google Maps, and I saw this park. And I remember thinking, Google seriously needs to update their databases. There ain't no parks around here. And so the next day I thought, okay, let me just go see what's around there. And I bet it's just a bunch of houses. But to my surprise, it was an actual forest. And as I wandered through these woods, I walked between two oak trees, and I saw a pond on my right and an expansive meadow. And I immediately thought, did I just cross into Narnia? And my second thought was, we have to protect this land. So with the Bliss Meadows project, we are weaving together 10 acres of public and private land to create equitable access to green space in our neighborhood. We become a Friends of group of this park that we reactivated. It was an abandoned city park. It's about 7 acres. This land was donated to the City Rec and Park Department in 1978, and the agency has done nothing with it. And then area 2 here is the 2.5 acres of the meadow with the pond that I was telling you about. We located the owner of this land, and we have entered into a long-term lease agreement with plans to put the land into a trust after 5 years of working on it. And the third section up here is a boarded up vacant building that we crowdsourced to purchase last May in 2019. So we started a GoFundMe, which resulted in us raising over $60,000 in less than a month. And now we're working on raising almost $500,000 to renovate this into a LEED certified building that will serve as a space for indoor workshops and classes, a community kitchen, offices, indoor growing space, and will also serve as the base camp for our future farm and forest childcare program. And this site sits on 1/2 an acre of land. And here's our preliminary drawing of it, which you can see it's like farmland and orchards in the meadow. And so the goals of Bliss Meadows, and Bliss is an acronym, it stands for Baltimore Living in Sustainable Simplicity. The goals of Bliss Meadows is to be a place where the local community can come together to have access to and learn about growing, preparing, and eating healthy food, to provide a place-based opportunity for Black, Indigenous, and people of color in our community to discover both cultural and natural history. It'll be a place where we'll address current issues around equitable access to green spaces. And we also want to build a replicable and scalable model led by members of our community to provide other neighborhoods with access to nature and resources for reconnecting with the outdoors. So we've only been building Bliss for about 1.5 years, and it has been amazing to see how much progress we have made. And our programming focuses on 5 pillars of environmental justice, and that is animal husbandry, community green space, conservation, environmental education, and food access. I'll get into those a little bit later. So one thing that I've been noticing with some of the pocket parks around the city is, and I've come up with this question, if you build it, they will come, but will they stay? And the answer is no. We believe it is not enough to just open a space up. It's not enough to just clean up a vacant lot and declare it a park. It's not enough to just mow down a vacant lot, put a bench and a tree in there. We need to ensure there are warm, welcoming folks at these sites to further engage with the community and deeper their connections to the outdoors. And our shared cultural history is a thread weaved through all aspects of our organization and programming. And we do this because we know there are two radio stations that everyone listens to, and they are WIIFM and MMFIFM. And if you can pop in the chat what you think these stand for, I'll give you a couple seconds. So WIIFM stands for What's in It for Me, and MMFIAM stands for Make Me Feel Important About Myself. So when I took an interest in nature, I wanted to learn all the things. And so I began to take classes and workshops and quickly noticed that I was usually one of or the only Black person in the audience, and there was hardly ever a person of color facilitating program. While reading up on the diversity, equity, inclusion in outdoor settings, many things stood out to me, the main being the concept of ancestral trauma, the scientific evidence that what happened to my enslaved ancestors 400 years ago has an effect on me today. I also read that 52% of people of color report feeling unsafe outdoors because Black and brown folks were essentially hunted, mauled, or lynched in natural spaces. Most classes always began with imagine a childhood tree, or had us think about our connection to trees, or think about a tree that we had growing up. And I grew up in Newark, New Jersey in the projects, and I didn't have a connection to trees. And furthermore, the symbol of a tree means very different things depending on race and age. What is your childhood climbing tree is another person's memory of a lynching. Our charge, especially as urban environmental educators, is in knowing and understanding these traumas while providing safe access and connections to nature. Leah Penniman, author of Farming While Black, once said, "The land may have been the scene of the crime, but she is not the criminal." Dr. Nushin Razani runs the Center of Nature and Health in Oakland, California. And this is a quote from an article that she was featured in. "The truth is that people whose cultures were colonized often had more true nature connections in their histories than did the colonizers. And this connection is what we, as people of color, know. We were originally hunters and gatherers, people who lived off the land and respected nature. Colonization severed this connection, and we at Backyard Basecamp are working on righting that relationship. And as they say nowadays, culturally relevant education hits different. When teaching gardening, you can say, you take this seed, you plant it in soil, water and wait, and then you'll have fruit to harvest. This is the normal process that most classes or most gardening programs go through. But for us, we say, do you see these seeds? These are the seeds that your ancestors braided in their hair as they were being stolen and shipped across the Middle Passage. They then took these seeds and planted them in secret gardens all around the plantations. You see, people of color have a history of resilience, perseverance, and survival that is too often overlooked, minimized, and/or ignored in mainstream educational programs. Let's take the work of George Washington Carver, who I quoted earlier in this presentation, where he said, start with what you have. So when I was in elementary school, during our obligatory Black History Month lessons, I learned that George Washington Carver invented peanut butter, which is exciting as a kid. Like, what kid doesn't like peanut butter? But I was 30 years old when I learned more about George Washington Carver and why he studied peanuts, the effect peanuts have on soil health, his work building state extension services as we know them, and his role at Tuskegee Institute, now known as Tuskegee University. For the first time, I had learned about George Washington Carver as a scientist, a botanist, and a naturalist. But in my 5th grade class, his legacy was reduced to just the invention of peanut butter. It could be that my teacher also didn't know these things, But the key here is that we were not urged to find out more about him. And so, as I said, our program focuses on 5 pillars. One is animal husbandry, because we know that caring for animals teaches valuable life lessons like responsibility, trust, compassion, respect, and patience. We also provide the space for children to gain public speaking skills, as sometimes they are the ones leading these talks and discussions and discussing the aspects of animal care. So here is my 7-year-old daughter, Corey, and she's talking about the care of the goats and how we care for them at Bliss Meadows. And this is a picture of my son with his favorite chicken, Angel. And sometimes I like post pictures and videos of them on our social media pages. The next is providing equitable access to community green space. And here's a picture of the pond that I was talking about earlier, where I came out of the woods and saw. In urban cities across the United States, access to nature has historically been exclusively reserved for the dominant white, middle, and upper class. In fact, research confirms that access to nature and green space in US metropolitan areas is correlated with income, class, and race. Women, people of color, and children from low-income households are most negatively impacted, facing geographical, cultural, and economic barriers to nature connection, which cause them to spend less time outside. In the city of Baltimore, the poverty rate is more than twice the national average. This presents a particularly poignant need to create safe opportunities for children and families living in low-income neighborhoods to connect with nature. Conservation and community science. And as you can see, citizen is crossed out because words do matter. And about a quarter of the residents in our neighborhood are not US citizens, and they are still a part of our community. And there aren't many opportunities for urban families to learn about, much less be involved in community science projects. A friend and colleague of mine, Deja Perkins, a graduate student at the University of North Carolina, looked at data collection protocols of community science from sites like eBird and iNaturalist. And she found that most of the data on those sites come from the more affluent areas of the city. And this rings true for many cities across the United States. Environmental education. We take a slow, intentional approach to environmental education. Where most programs typically begin in the woods, we usually begin in vacant lots, in parking lots, in ballparks, because not everyone is ready to jump straight into a hike. And by taking this weeds to woods approach, as we call it, we allow time for people to gain familiarity with what's good in their hood, as my friend Akima Price says. Food access. So as I mentioned, we are in a USDA high priority food area. So we provide access to learning about our food system, as well as hands-on experience with gardening. It's so heartening to see and hear people who are amazed at how food they eat even grows. And it's also heartening to hear some of the adults that come through talking about the experience that they had with growing and things that they remember from their grandparents' house or their great-grandma's house or something like that. While we do offer planter boxes and fruit treats for neighbors to pick their own produce at no cost, we are not aiming to just give people fish. We aim to teach people how to fish by educating on self-reliance and sustainability. As Fannie Lou Hamer says, when you've got 400 quarts of greens and gumbo soup canned for the winter, nobody can push you around or tell you what to say or do. And so to sum up, we must survey our cities and find the gaps in green space, create access to green space in predominantly Black and brown neighborhoods, staff them with BIPOC members of that community, and offer culturally relevant programming to introduce and deepen connections to nature. Doing so creates a container of safety that can allow us to view nature as a place of healing. After emancipation, formerly enslaved people were promised 40 acres and a mule, and that was never honored. With Bliss Meadows, we have 10 acres and a dream, and we are creating the change we wish to see in this world. Thank you so much. I'll be available for questions. This is our contact information. Feel free to email me. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. There's our website as well. Again, I'm here to answer any questions if you have them.
Atiya, thank you.
Ew.
Trying to multitask here and turn off the screen share. Is it off? Stop share. There we go. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for blowing our hair back this morning. We expect nothing less from you. No, that's terrific. And the way that you've brought so many of us into just a richer understanding of some of the challenges and opportunities that are before us is just terrific. And I want to open this up to some of the questions that we're getting in from folks here.
Sure.
Of course, now I have to figure out how to do that.
Oh, hi, Abby. I'm looking in the chat and I see people from Baltimore actually in the conference. That's so funny.
Tia, here's one for you. Numerous efforts around the country are aimed at increasing green space in urban areas. While the intent of such efforts may be good, they can have unintended consequences. The High Line Trail in New York City, for example, revitalized a part of the city only to have that revitalization push out members of Black and Brown communities when it inadvertently drove up real estate prices in adjacent neighborhoods. Are you addressing green gentrification with Bliss Meadows? And what advice would you have for organizations that seek to come into Black and Brown communities with plans for urban parks and gardens?
Yeah, so we, as a team, we talk a lot about green gentrification and what that will look like for us and how we see gentrification happening across the city of Baltimore. And so we've looked at our project as well as some other projects around the country and really looked at like things people have done to address green gentrification. And a lot of it has to do with policy and like at the city level. So whether that's like doing rent caps or just, you know, allocating some money for low to moderate income, subsidizing some housing. And so we've been looking at ways that we as an organization can ensure that our project does not lead to green gentrification because, you know, we want this project to serve the people who are in our neighborhood right now, not the people who will come in the future. And so we definitely have looked at a lot of studies and we're working on a plan to bring to our district council person to ensure that it does not happen.
Thank you. We've got one from Sandy Schwartz. Are you receiving interest from other areas to replicate your model?
We have. And the thing about us is that we really intend to stay where we are. We're happy to share what we've done, but our intention is not to like scale up or, you know, like take over other things. But like I said, we're happy to share, you know, the steps that we've taken to get to where we are right now. And it's important to know that we've only been at this work for a year. We started last April with the Bliss Meadows project. A lot has happened over the course of that year and a half. But yeah, we're happy to talk about every step that we took.
Thank you. We've got one from Dr. Morgan Green, who is the director of our Emerging Leaders Program. He talks about how speechless he was after the raw power. I got a flurry of texts from him while your video was playing as well. He wants to know what you found helps to maintain your own mental health with the unavoidable burnout that follows leaders doing such impactful and relevant work.
That's a really good question. Thank you for asking it, Morgan. So I had to learn actually how to ensure that I take care of myself and that, you know, I don't burn out in service to others. And I do what I used to call Wednesday wanders. So every Wednesday when my kids were in school, I would like drop my kids off at school, then I would head straight to a local park and I would just like do a day hike. And I would intentionally try to get lost. But apparently I have a pretty good sense of direction when I'm not driving. So I haven't gotten lost yet. But I really do try to carve out some time for myself as much as I can. Now with like virtual schooling, my kids are like home all the time. And I still work in the hospital. I'm a night shift nurse on the weekends. I did that intentionally so I can be available during the day to have meetings and attend conferences like this one. But I really do intentionally make time for myself, which is usually Sunday mornings. When my husband's home from work, and then I just leave the house for a couple of hours and do a solo hike or something. So that has been like my routine.
Thank you. We've got another one from Joel Sisolak, can you speak more about your point? Build it and they will come, but will they stay? Did you create a
Mhm.
docent program?
Did I create a what program?
Docent? I think it's
Oh, no. So what I meant by that question is that like there are a lot of places across the city where they have there was like a formerly vacant lot, and so the city just like mowed the lot, planted like a tree and put a bench there, and then they named it a park, and then that was it. And they're like, okay, you guys have a park now, shut up. Like, we gave you some green space. But this, I was talking more of like you need folks to staff that park and to kind of welcome people into it and like show them how to engage with the space in the ways that they can engage with the spaces. If you just like say this is a park now, like people are going to be like, okay, that's cool, but not really engage with the space the way that you want them to, I think.
Thank you. We've got another one here. How are your programs impacted in winter months? And what workarounds have you used to bring the community together when weather is a deterrent?
So the winter is kind of funny. I still like going outside in the winter. I just dress warmly. And what we do is we kind of go on tour around the city. So we don't just stay at Bliss Meadows. We will go to like some of the other parks around Baltimore City and sometimes in the county too. So we kind of travel throughout to keep things interesting, to find new places and introduce people to new spaces that are really close that they don't even know have existed.
Thank you. We have another one from Christian Abilso, and he asks, how did you personally overcome feelings of historical trauma associated with nature? What lessons can be learned for others? Thank you.
I don't think that it's something to overcome. I think it's just something that you sit with and live with. And I think, being Black in this country is its own trauma. And that's something that we kind of live with every single day. We still keep trekking, we keep going. I think learning about it and reading about it in like true and honest ways. So I have a lot of books about like the Farm and Wild Black book was one that really kind of helped me learn about some of the things that I had no idea about, especially that happened in the Deep South. And my own family is from the Deep South, and they don't even talk about these things. And I had to like force it out of them. My father especially, about 2 years ago, last February, I did my own Black history thing where I basically did interviews with, people in my family, my grandmother, my grandfather. I have a 94-year-old uncle that lives in Miami, and I called him and like he told me a lot of family history. So really just like being grounded in myself and knowing my family, knowing my history has really helped me to kind of move forward and push forward and be open to learning more about what life was like back then, and to see like the comparisons, the similarities and the differences of what we're going through now, and how things really have not changed. I know a lot of people, some people like to say like, oh, slavery was so long ago, but then they don't think about, after emancipation, there was Jim Crow, and there were like all these other things that have happened. And even now, like there's so much systemic racism in this country that like, you can't get away from it.
Thank you. We've got one from Elena Arakaki, and it is, culturally relevant programming and events are so important for making residents feel like they belong. How have you identified what types of programming are most relevant to the community that you work with?
So our community engagement model is like, we really engage with our community. And so they are invited into a lot of our meetings. We are working on the final design of our site. And so we invited the community out to those meetings to kind of figure out like what they wanted, what they didn't want, what seemed exciting, what they weren't so excited about. One told us like the hours that she wanted us to be open because she didn't want people running in and out all day. And we did, so throughout the summer and the fall, we did a mutual aid program where we were just giving away boxes of like 10 pounds of produce. And we went door to door in our neighborhood and we talked about our project. We told them where the produce was coming from. We asked them, what they were excited about seeing, how they would want to be engaged. if they had kids, if they want the kids to come down to see the chickens and goats. And so we really have done a boots on the ground community engagement approach. It's not like, you know, we just put up an invitation and said, come if you want. It was like, this is happening. This is what we want to do, but we want to make sure that it's what you all want us to do before we move forward with it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We've got an anonymous attendee asking, are you being supported by other organizations or mentors?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I have so many mentors and so many partners across the city, from like the city agencies on down to other nonprofits in the city who are looking to partner. Nationally, I have a lot of like nature connection schools and programs, and you know, they've really kind of helped me hone my skills as a facilitator of like how to facilitate nature education for people. And there's this thing I'm part of called the Nature Connection Network that is like a culmination of a lot of these schools, and we kind of are on this list served. And there's also Soul Fire Farm has the Northeast Farmers of Color, which is another listserv, and we are there to, you know, we ask questions and get support and guidance and things like that. So there are a lot of networks, a lot of mentors, a lot of support for the work that we are doing.
So I just have to ask, right at the beginning though, you didn't have any funding, and yet you managed to go and crowdfund enough money to buy the 2 to 3 acre lot. How did you do that? On top of,
oh my gosh,
that
was a crazy month, let me tell you. So so like I said, I'm a night shift nurse. I've always worked night shift because working during the day is just too many people around for me. So I work 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And around that time last year, I was working 3 shifts a week. So I was working Saturday night, Sunday night, and Monday night. And I sleep on Tuesdays, just to let everyone know that's my sleep day. And so we started the GoFundMe, and I honestly thought we were only going to raise about like $12,000. And I was like, okay, we need to figure out some kind of loan situation to get this house, because like, I'm not letting this go. And so we started the GoFundMe, and like the funding just came, it just kept coming in, and people kept sharing their story. And I started, I was reaching out to other like small businesses who create like herbal crafts, or they had games or books, and I would say like, hey, we're doing this fundraiser, would you be willing to offer something to people who donate on this day? And so we got a lot of donated gifts, whether that was like an online class or a book or a board game or something, that we kind of highlighted and gave out to people. And some people were like, oh, I didn't even know you had prizes. This is nice. I was just given to give. But yeah, I just still don't even know how that happened.
How much did you raise?
So we were able to raise about like $62,000 in a month. That was just to purchase the site. And now we're working on raising money to renovate the building. And we're looking at raising about $500,000 for that, because we want it to be a LEED certified building. And we'll teach about self-reliance and sustainability with like rainwater harvesting, solar panels, composting toilets, gray water harvesting, all that stuff. And so we're working on raising that, and through like, we're in like the quiet phase of this capital campaign, and we've raised about half of it so far.
Of the initial 62, how much of that came from your neighborhood?
I would say about like 1% of it. 1 to 2% of it was our neighborhood. And then we have a really funny, like our border is like, our neighborhood is like low to moderate income, and then the next neighborhood over, which is called Hamilton, is where a lot of like middle class to upper class white folks. That there's this map of Baltimore that circles social media sometimes. It's like the real map of Baltimore, and that area is called what is it called? Interracial hippie families. So that's where a lot of most of our supporters are, in the Hamilton Lauraville area, which is like the next neighborhood over.
Okay, thank you. We've got another one. I'm so sure that you get a lot of offers to collaborate with other city and nonprofit agencies. As a woman of color and leading a program that heavily uplifts people of color, what official or unofficial metric do you use to determine organizations' authenticity? What makes you want to work or collaborate with other groups?
Oh, we have, well, we're trying to develop like a I don't want to say like a worksheet, but it's kind of like a rubric for people who we will collaborate with. There's like a lot of shady people out there, and I'm always wary of like who. Stop laughing. I'm always wary of who we align ourselves with, and so when we do receive these requests, we do like research. So we like look at their website, we Google people, we like find out what they're all about. And then, you know, it maybe takes a day or two for us to be like, okay, what do we think about this? Are we going to move forward with this, or is this something that we'll just say no to? And most of the time it's like good people that we say yes to, and there's been like two shady folks, and then we were like, oh, hell no.
I do have a question about sentence enhancers for the very end. We have a question from Dr. Louise Chawla. When you say "our," Atiya, who is that? Can you say a bit about the management structure of the park?
Yeah, so we are a nonprofit organization. Backyard Basecamp is the nonprofit. We function more as like a co-op though. So we have our board and we have our staff. So there are 3 people on our board and there are 3 people on our staff. So there's myself, there's Dr. Victoria Rose Bruce-Sefero, who just became our programs specialist. And then we have a farm manager, his name is Jordan. And we have actually a team meeting on Sunday, and we kind of like all get together and we go through, you know, updates from our last meeting, and we talk about plans for the future. We look at the budget, we look at programs that we want to offer. This is where we talk about, you know, potential collaborations, like who's inviting us in and how do we feel about that? Have you heard anything about this person? Have you heard anything about this person? And so this team of 6 to 7 of us, depending, we really sit down and we not really form consensus all the time, but we we talk about almost everything and we make decisions together.
Thank you. We've got another one from Sarah Barlow. What would you suggest is the best way or ways for white allies to support efforts like this without getting in the way or diluting the importance of BIPOC movements and projects like this?
I think the important thing here is to just like not make it about yourself. Like there's a lot of white allies that I see who are like, you know, really performative in their support. So it's like, oh, hey, it's cool to like support Black people now. Let me hop on that. And they're like taking pictures, kind of like the people who are like, they give something to homeless people and then they want to take a picture of it. Like, why are you doing that? You can be supportive and quiet about it. Or if you want to reach out and like figure out ways that we can align, that's fine. Or if you just want to share, I'm all about like share all of our stuff, share our post, share our thing. But what you won't do is like take our post and then like make it like it's something that you said. Just there's a share button, just share it, and you can say like, you know, how you feel about that and why you think that's important, but make sure it's in our voices and not like you retelling our story.
Thank you. We've got one from Vicky Silvas. As a nurse, have you been able to engage the medical community in your groundbreaking work?
Yeah, so we started, so Walk with a Doc has this program that's really quiet called Just Walk, where like you don't have to be a doctor to start that program. And so we did start a Just Walk chapter in Baltimore, and then Corona Bastons came and ruined everything. So we have not done a walk yet, but we do have the program, and one of our sponsors for that program has been Kaiser Permanente. So they sponsored our like startup kit to start that process. So and then we have like some of the hospitals and physicians and nurses that are like, Baltimore is like the medical city. We have Hopkins and University of Maryland here, and we've been engaging with like the medical community about that program specifically, and then trying to figure out how we can like do more programming along those lines, especially in the nutritional sciences. That's kind of where we want like the farm that we have on Bliss Meadows to really teach about healthy eating and diabetes management and heart disease management, because these are diseases that really affect our population.
That's great. I can't believe this, but we've got about 5 minutes left, and that includes some closing remarks. So we're going to continue this conversation. I've got a couple of last questions for you, but feel free to continue on Slack. And of course, we always want to keep the conversations going with the Atiya, so I hope you're part of the workshops that follow. We've got one that says, can you speak about your background and how you were inspired to work in sustainability, farming, and in the outdoors?
Yeah, so my background is not very exciting at all. So I was born and raised in Newark, New Jersey. I knew nothing about nature until, like, my now husband took me on my first hike when I was 22, and we were driving into that park. I swear, y'all, I thought he was trying to kill me. And I was like, where the fuck you taking me? I was like, do I need to get my knife out? Like, what's happening here? And he was like, calm down. And so we just went on a really short hike to this overlook. And like, I had the best time of my life. I was really like stressed out in nursing school at the time. And we maybe only spent like 20 to 25 minutes there. And I was like, this is like, we need to do this all the time. And so we started hiking every weekend, every other weekend. And then we had our daughter, Corey, and we would bring her along on our hikes, and she hated every single minute of it. We would pull into a park and she'd be like, is this hiking? I hate hiking. So I started doing a lot of research on like, how do you get kids like to like nature? And I found out that like, they don't need to be going on these 3-mile, 6-mile hikes. Like, they kind of just want to sit and be and look at all the sticks and leaves. And so we started doing that, and like, lo and behold, she loved that aspect of it. And so we kept doing that. And then I started the Baltimore chapter of Free Forest School here. And I was leading families with preschool age kids outside, and you know, they started asking me questions like, you know what this is? Do you know what this is? And I was like, oh shit, if I'm gonna be leading families out here, I should probably know what poison ivy looks like, because like, I had no idea. And we would do this thing, like our open and circle, the kids would ask, like, we would ask the kids, like, what do you think we're going to see today? And they would be like, snakes and tigers and bears. And I'm like, oh crap, are we going to see snakes and tigers and bears? I hope not, but we'll see. And so I signed up to take the Maryland Master Naturalist course so I could learn more about nature, because I was like, I need to know the names of some of these things. And that's kind of how I took this deep dive into nature education and outdoor education.
Thanks. And I am glad to see that you did sneak some sentence and answers in there. That is her turn.
Always authentic. Always authentic.
I love it. Got one last one. It's with James Edward Mills. I love your work. What are your current most immediate needs, and how can folks help you?
So our immediate needs is really just renovating this house. We are intending that to be like our indoor space. And like I said, we want to have that community kitchen so that we can grow and harvest things on a farm, then bring that immediately inside and cook a meal, to really showcase that like eating healthy is not about eating salads 3 times a day like some of our neighbors think it is. Like, you can make a healthy meal and it can still taste good. So that's something that we really are aiming to do. And hopefully my goal is to have that house in like workable condition by this time next year. And then we want to start that farm and forest school, which is very near and dear to my heart. My friend, my coworker now, Rose, that's something that we've been developing for a while now, when all this was just an idea. We really want to ensure that our community and the kids in our community have access to nature education and outdoor education, because all the places around here that do it are A, expensive, and B, too far. So having a place right in our neighborhood where these kids can kind of go and, you know, have that work, have that program subsidized, so that, you know, their parents don't have to pay for it. And then we'll have all the gear that the kids need to be outdoors throughout the seasons. It's going to be amazing. And we intend to start that within the next 5 years or so. We developed this 5-year plan of how we're going to launch things.
And I'm sure cold hard cash would not hurt either.
That never hurts. I mean, this is a capitalistic society. Let's not forget that.
Tia, thank you. Always a pleasure. You always just crack me up. Love talking to you. And It truly is. It's an honor to recognize your work with the Shift Awards, and they come from the very bottoms of our heart. And you have earned every single one that we've.
Thank you. Thank you. I truly
More.
appreciate it.
Yeah, and just thanks for the work that you're doing. It's so terrific.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Am I going to be able to see this chat later? Because I see questions that I want to answer.
Yeah, so all this is being put into our Slack channel. There'll be a specific Slack channel for this morning's presentation. You'll be able to continue the conversation there.
Awesome.
Okay, we'll hope to see you later.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Bye.